the formula for contemplative prayer is really based on the wisdom saying of Jesus. In Matthew 6:6, he has this interesting wisdom saying among a number of others in the Sermon on the Mount. So he's speaking to everyone who happened to be there on the side of the mountain. These remarks were not necessarily limited as to his disciples. So he says, if you want to pray, enter your inner room, close the door, and pray to your Father in secret. And your Father who is in secret will reward you. So each of those words deserves a little exegesis. To begin with, if you want to pray, suggests that the word prayer has a deeper meaning than we ordinarily think of the term. It's not so much what you say or what you think or what spiritual acts you're making that constitutes prayer, but your intention. And your intention reflects the habitual relationship that you have with God at this point in your spiritual journey. But as we've also seen, God wants that this relationship keep growing in intensity and in length, height, breadth, and depth all our lives long. So it would mean that when he says if you would like to pray, he's talking about if you would like to deepen the relationship you have, or initiate a deeper one than you have, or continue the one that's evolving. Here is a formula that might be helpful. So centering prayer is simply a method that concretizes that general formula in such a way as to make it more accessible to people as a practice. So there's nothing new about centering prayer. It's simply a method based on this saying of Jesus that has been interpreted by the Desert Fathers and reported in John Cashin's book. So in their interpretation, the inner room, sometimes it says private room, but people didn't have private rooms in those days unless they were very, very rich. So the inner room means the spiritual level of our being. So that Jesus invites us to enter that place. And how are you going to do this? Well, by leaving the place that you are, which is ordinary psychological awareness, by deliberately letting go of the ordinary preoccupations of everyday life during the time of prayer. But basically, it's not so much the place as a state of consciousness that is the inner room. It's the spiritual level of our being. So that brings me to this issue, which is very important, and that is what goes on in the inner room. Basically, what goes on there is the development of contemplative prayer from start to its completion in divine union. And then he says, close the door, which is an invitation, according to this interpretation of those early monastic fathers and mothers, to stop the interior dialogue, that is to say, commentaries, evaluations, judgments, and our emotional reactions to them that tend to go on all day long and provide the stream of consciousness that we call ordinary psychological awareness. And the first two stages of the formula of Jesus, entering the inner room, closing the door, represent those first two steps of centering prayer as a method. Closing the eyes, letting go of the external world, letting go of the interior world, by introducing the word or the symbol, and then you're ready for prayer in secret, which is God's pure gift, or contemplation in the strict sense of the word as it became known in later Christian tradition. So I think prayer in secret is Jesus' term for what later became known as contemplation, at least in the apophatic sense of the term, which means beyond particular acts or thinking. It's just a simple formula that might be stated as, if you want to enter a deeper relationship with God, be still. As the psalmist says, Jesus didn't say this, but there are echoes of the psalm in this formula: be still and you will know that I am God. And again, later St. Paul picked up this idea, and he speaks of praying for the deep knowledge of God for his disciples in the different Christian communities he founded. And the word for knowledge is not intellectual knowledge, but the kind of experiential knowledge that is very intimate and direct. It's, in other words, it's not the knowledge that's deduced through concepts or principles, but rather that's immediate, like opening your eyes and you see a tree if it happens to be there. So it's the direct intuition that Jesus and St. Paul are referring to by the word knowledge. Actually, it's the same one that is used in Genesis when the text says that Adam knew Eve and she begot her various children. So it's knowledge that is as intimate, as direct, and as all-absorbing as the knowledge that takes place in conjugal love. So this is not an invention of mystics. This is the image or the paradigm that God himself chose among all the other human experiences to indicate the intimacy with which he is present.